Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Dude, I Love That. I'm Liv, and today we are talking about two Netflix original movies, Purple Hearts and Look Both Ways. Now, I decided to combine these two because Purple Hearts really only has the two main characters, and so I figured why not tackle two at one time? So, we're going to start out with typing the characters from Two Hearts, and then we'll move on to Look Both Ways. And so, if this is your first time hearing one of these episodes, we're going to be talking through the Enneagram types of each of the main characters, and we'll do a little bit on how they interact together and what each of their types brings to a relationship. Okay, so first off with Purple Hearts. So we have Cassie and we have Luke. So both of these characters I feel like were fairly easy to type because we saw their personalities in a really full view, right? We were able to see them in good times, bad times, before they met each other, while they were together. And so we got a really good scope of who they are as individuals and then what they're like together. So let's start with Cassie. She was so fun because I feel like she was very obviously this certain type. And I mean, I guess there could have been maybe one other type that she could have been, but I'll kind of discuss that and debunk why she isn't in a minute. But I ended up typing Cassie as a type 4. And some of the reasons why was because she mentions several times that her art is kind of her identity. You know, she wants to be known for what she brings to the world artistically. And she mentions how she's okay with hustling for her art because she'd rather not be in a soul sucking job where she doesn't get to use her gifts, talents, and abilities, which of course, that's what we all want, but she's really living that out, which props to her. She's definitely someone who has fairly irreverent humor and she's okay with letting you have it. You know, she's definitely not going to hold back if she has opinions. We see that time and time again in this movie. And she's someone that she's not going to compromise her unique individual personality for the sake of, I guess, keeping the peace. And so she's someone that she lives out everything that she believes. We see that she had flags representing her social and or political views on her balcony, and she definitely was ready to like make some noise if need be. And so obviously we see that that hustle, I say hustle, I don't like that word at all, but that, I don't know a better word for it, it's kind of hustle, or maybe mentality, we'll call it mentality. So that really helped her to get to where she wanted to be eventually, right? She's like, I want to be selling out stadiums, I want to be doing music full time. And because she kept working at it and kept going, she ended up getting there, which is amazing. And we see that the type 4, they have a connection to a type 1. And so we see, you know, the ones in the gut triad, they go after what they want and they won't stop till they get it. And so that's where we see that a little bit from the 4 pulling on that. However, I wanted to talk about this because this is super interesting. So I think some people might have been like, is she a 2? Because she cares a lot about things and she wants to put action behind her words for things that she cares about, which is kind of a 2 thing. Or I guess I should say a typically thought of 2 trait. So what we see from her is actually that I think she's a 4 pulling on her 2. Because remember, the 4 in stress goes to a 2. So what they do is in crazy situations or when they're under a lot of pressure or just maybe when they're not having the best day, they actually go to the low side of type 2. And so they can take on some of those traits. And I think that's more of what we see from her. We definitely see that when she does get stressed or when she feels like someone is trying to box her in or whatever, she kind of takes on this more dramatized, temperamental take instead of other types would maybe be a little bit more like, I'm just going to be quiet and kind of let them say their piece and then we'll move on. Some types might have been more aggressive about it, but I think she's a little bit more of the person that it's more of an emotional hit for her than it is like something that she wants to react to just like out of her gut or something that she needs to sit and process before she reacts. And so everything for her is so tied into her emotions that she doesn't really separate emotions from situations. So types that would do that would be like 8s and 5s and 6s, but she lives with it all kind of jumbled together. And so that's where it took so long for her to actually open up to Luke, even when they were in close quarters and seeing each other all the time. She still was like, I have an issue with you and it's not going to go away. And then finally, we see her start to have those moments of breaking down to being more sympathetic and caring to him when she can tell that it's a really serious situation. And so that's where she backs down a little bit and is like, you know what? I'm going to take the focus off of me for a second and put it onto him because I see that he needs that. And that's that 4 really growing at the type 1. Because remember, 4 goes to type 1 in health. And so I think that's really where she's drawing from there. And that's not to say that type 4s aren't helpful or caring at all. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we see her in kind of a lower health level in the beginning because she's dealing with medical debt, and she's stressed out and she's doing all these different jobs just to keep afloat. And so she's just really not in a space where she can take life in stride. She's just really constantly crazed and stressed out and dealing with so much that she can't even take the time to separate her emotions from things anymore. It's just like everything's out there, we're going for it. And I think, a little bit fours do enjoy that. They enjoy the ups and downs of life. They enjoy the fullness of moments, and that can be incredible. But in her situation, I think it's actually taking a toll because she's feeling the weight of every moment. And that's something that it does take you kind of getting out of it and being like, whoa, whoa, let me look at the situation as a whole instead of trying to be so focused on all the details and feeling everything that's involved in it. And I think she does end up doing that. We see her get so healthy towards the end. And like I said before, she definitely has some moments where she's self absorbed and temperamental. And as with everyone, you're always growing in life. And we see her really grow by the end of the movie where she's thinking about others way more than herself. She's really valuing what others do for her, and she's willing to take help, whereas like we saw in the first part of the movie, she's like, I don't want help, I want to do this on my own, I want to suffer for my art is what she says, and she really does. And so seeing her at the end actually be willing to be fully involved with someone else and kind of intertwine her life is so cool because that just shows immense growth and really just maturity on her part. And so I want to talk really quick about Luke since this is part of her whole story here. So Luke was really fun for me to type because I feel like his story is quite interesting. And obviously, we have this view of him when the movie first starts, right? We're like, oh, cool. Like, he's in the military, he's self disciplined, blah, blah, blah. But we quickly find out, wait a second, he was a junkie and was having serious issues not too long ago. However, this is what's really fascinating about him because I think this is extremely unique. And so it's good to highlight it. Basically, he was able to quit cold turkey and he put himself in the position of going into the military because he wanted to straighten himself out. And so that's what I think is so cool. Like, not many people and not many personality types would be able to put themselves in a really difficult situation where they're required to grow and to grow quickly in order to get themselves like on the right track. That's huge, and that shows so much maturity. And because of that, I decided that he's a type 1. And that might be a little bit like, what the heck? No way. But let's look at it this way. He is very dead set, especially in the beginning of the movie, on following the rules. He wants to not only follow the rules, but uphold them. And he really does insert himself in other people's situations if he feels like rules are being broken, if he feels like someone's being shady. And so he kind of feels like, no, there's a wrong and I need to right it. And that's something that you'll see the one do because they are so justice oriented and they're also huge on following rules, procedures, and standards. Now, in the same breath, funny thing about the type 1, they will sometimes do this thing of not letting their right hand know what the left hand's doing. And they will actually end up breaking the rules themselves. However, when they're in that place, and usually it's come out of times of stress or if they're just in a bad situation, what they do is they justify and find a reason for why they're breaking the rules. And that in their mind kind of makes it okay because they're like, no, there's a reason I'm doing it. It's for justice, or it's because I've put in so much work and I deserve blah, 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 or this just has to be fixed. Someone's got to do it and it's going to be me. So obviously, we need all those things, right? I mean, those are huge tasks that someone's got to take on because then we wouldn't have lawyers and we wouldn't have law enforcement and all of that. And so that's where we see he's able to take his desire for rightness and goodness and he's actually able to put it into really good use by joining the Marines. And so even though he kind of makes a huge stink about Cassie wanting to do this shotgun wedding so that they can have health insurance and extra money, he ends up caving because he's like, you know what, I'm in a bad situation. This has to be done. And so that's how he's justifying it. However, you can see that he is beating himself up on the inside. He doesn't like lying. He doesn't want anyone else to know. He doesn't want to expose his wrongdoings, or even so his family knows. And then it's like he has to backtrack. He doesn't want any of that. He wants to do the bare minimum damage possible so that they can get done what they need while not causing anyone else stress or harm or whatever. The reason that I think this relationship is very interesting is the fact that, like I said, four and one do have connections to each other. One goes to four in stress, and four goes to one in growth. And so it's really interesting because we see that a lot with ones, sevens, and fours, right? Because they all have connections to each other in different ways. And so we see a lot of one in seven marriages and we see a lot of one in four marriages because what they do is they're actually filling in the gaps for each other in a really beautiful way because they're able to understand where the other is coming from. And even though the four and the one go to each other in opposite ways, if that makes sense, one goes to it in stress, one goes in growth. What's great is they will have such an easy time communicating what's going on because they've actually been there themselves, right? Because they've had to pull on that type, they've had to be in that mindset at one time or another. And so that's what we're able to see from them. And that's where I think if we were to see them 5 years in the future, they would have such a great marriage where they're really good at communicating with each other. They're having deep emotional conversations and being able to really lay it out on the table with each other and have a super strong foundation while also being able to grow both in their gut space and in their heart space because sometimes one can have a hard time going to their heart space. It can be a little bit scary. It can be like, I don't want to open up those feelings because if I do, I might be like down a rabbit hole that I can't get back out of. And vice versa. The four, they really do, like I said, they enjoy the emotional part of life. And so disconnecting from that and going to that one space can be scary because they're like, but emotions are a huge part of my identity and my place here. And I feel like if I go to my one space, I could be losing some of that. And so what's great is basically they're able to mirror for each other why their type is so needed in life. And of course, like I said, just like for the one, if we didn't have ones, we wouldn't have lawyers and law enforcement and military personnel and blah, blah, blah. For the four, if we didn't have them, we wouldn't have beautiful buildings that you see. We wouldn't have art teachers. We wouldn't have authors. We wouldn't have all these great things. And so being able to see what they bring into the world is so great. And those two together are unstoppable. Okay, now we're going to move on to Look Both Ways. And this movie, I did not have high hopes for it. I'm going to be honest. I was kind of like, I don't know if this is my thing, but it was actually really interesting. And I ended up typing Natalie as a type six. I think she's so interesting. And there were so many things about her that you can see that she's good at processing things. She's good at walking other people through processing things. She's good at telling people, hey, I need a minute to just kind of sit in this and figure out what the heck's going on. And that's something that you see when a six is healthy and when they're growing. They become really bold in terms of communication and being able to say, this is what I need. This isn't what I need. Blah, blah, blah. One of the things that I loved so much about her, though, that I really want to highlight is the fact that even though other people around her were kind of encouraging her not to have the baby, even her own parents, which that was so sad. I'm like, could you just have been supportive? Like, please. But what's so nice is she was able to hold her own and say, you know what? Your opinions aren't going to sway what I know is right and what I want to do. And she had the baby anyway. And she was able to really come to that decision easily. You could see she was able to decide what's right, what's wrong, and what she needed to do for her own life because nothing is worse than as a six feeling like you're getting all these different opinions and now you don't really know what you want to do. You don't know what you want. You just know what everybody else wants for you. And so it was nice to be able to see a six that was so dead set on this is what I want and I'm going to do it. And I think that comes from the fact that she was so stable and she's reliable and she's someone that could handle the responsibility and was willing to do it. And so I think she was actually thriving in it. I think at the beginning we do see, she's struggling because of newborn life. I mean, everybody's been there, right? But she's someone that is able to come out of it and be like, this is for a greater purpose, and I can deal with a bit of discomfort now in order for the joy that comes after. And, yeah, she has some days where she's down and she's depressed, but she's able to get out of the funk quickly. She doesn't just sit in it because some types they would want to just sit in that melancholy, depressed, woe is me state. But she's like, I can do that for a little bit just to process my emotions, but I'm not going to stay there. I'm not going to sit here and let emotions rule my life. I'm going to have this moment, that I'm going to move past it because I need to keep looking forward in order to achieve what I want to achieve. That's the other thing too. So she mentions a couple times, what is the plan? I want to be clear on where we're headed so that I know what I need to achieve in order to get there. And that's where you can see the six pulling on their three. So six has a connection to three in stress. However, as I always say, that does not mean that the 6 only goes to 3 in stress or only pulls from those qualities when they're in stress. A lot of times you're using your stress and your growth numbers in different scenarios. And so for her, she's pulling on it when it comes to her career and her school life. She's like, okay, I want to do this thing, but I need a game plan of how to get there. And we even see that she's mocked for having a 5-year plan. But welcome to the life of a 6. They want to know what's coming so that they can be prepared and so that they can work towards it in a methodical and positive way. And then this is really fun. So I kind of knew right away what Gabe's type was. And I think this relationship's actually super interesting because I don't see, or at least I personally haven't seen, a lot of 6 and 9 relationships. So yes, I do think Gabe is a 9. And that's because he really was able to play it cool. He was able to take this heavy information and he was like, okay, so things are going to be different now. That's fine. I can adapt. And I think he had that really 9 peacemaker vibe about him, right? There was nothing that happened that he was completely taken aback by. He was able to adjust to whatever was needed. He was so helpful. He was right there with Natalie the entire time and wanted to be there and desired to pour into her life and the baby's life. And I saw so much 9 in him and I loved it because I think a 6-9 relationship is so interesting because the 6 can tend to have those neurotic moments where they're stressed out or things are just crazy and they need time to decompress. But instead of decompressing, they just get even more anxious. And so it can kind of be this spiral. Whereas the 9 is able to come in and be like, okay, let's calm things down. Let's look at this. And of course, because they're in the gut triad, they're going to be a little bit more action oriented, but in a calm way. And so that's what we see from him. We see that he's able to balance her out. He's able to talk her off ledges from time to time where she's just like, how am I going to do this? What's going on? My life is nuts. He's like, it's all good. Let's look at this rationally and let's calm down. I know you can do it. And his first thing he goes to is really encouragement. That's what he does the entire time. He's encouraging her and he's helping her to see the situation from multiple sides, which of course is the gift of a 9. Nines make incredible therapists and they really do give you great advice because they're able to see positives, negatives, areas that maybe need some improvement. And so they're great people to go to if you do need a little boost of just like, I'm struggling, dude. Help me see it from a different perspective. And lastly, let's talk about Nick. He was really kind of difficult for me because I felt like I was seeing a lot of 3. I was seeing a lot of maybe even some 8. But what's interesting is he seems more calm than an 8. If he was an 8, then he'd be an 8 wing 9 for sure. But I really do think he's probably more of a 3. He's one that also mentioned having the 5-year plan. And so I think he does have that planner side of him where he's like, I know what I want to work towards and I'm willing to stick it out somewhere that I don't love in order to make it happen. But I'm only going to do that to a point. He didn't want to stay there the whole time at this job where he's like, kind of feels like a dead end to me. And so he was able to realize maybe this isn't the place for me right now, or maybe this isn't the place I need to continue being for the long term. He's like, I think I have gifts, talents, and abilities that will be better used somewhere else and that will actually get me to where I want to go. And the interesting part was that he was willing to take a pay cut and kind of turn his life upside down a little bit in order to do a job that would get him more towards his goal and that would be more enjoyable for him. And, some types are more motivated by financial security, right? They're going to stick it out at something they don't really love in order to have the paycheck they want. Whereas he was more focused on, I really value doing something useful with my time. And this job right here, it was good for a time, but it's not where I want to be long term and it's not going to get me to my ultimate goal. So, what do I need to do to make that happen? So, he found the other job and he's like, this makes more sense for me. Also, I should preface, I did not watch the end of this movie, so I don't know if he stays or goes, but I'm just talking about things that I saw throughout that stuck out to me and was able to help me kind of figure out, is he this or is he that? The other thing is, I think he was really just clicking with Natalie and he was able to kind of like play off her humor right away and they just kind of got along instantly. And so, again, this is okay. This is interesting. I just realized. So, if I think that Gabe's a 9, Natalie's a 6, and Nick's a 3, they would all have connections to each other, right? Because 6, 9, 3, they all connect in different ways. So it would actually be really fascinating if Natalie, as a 6, had a 9 boyfriend in the one life and a 3 boyfriend in the other. That's super cool. But they just really were able to put themselves in the other's shoes and figure out where they were coming from and how to give them the advice they need, the encouragement they needed, and help them see things from different views. Anyways, that is it for this episode. I really hope that you enjoyed. Be sure and follow along on Instagram at Hey, it's Liv James. And remember, check back on Tuesday for a brand new episode. We upload every Tuesday and Friday, and I will see you next time. Bye.